I mean, the idea that the former president of the United States would say that he, quote, encourages a brutal dictator to invade our allies, and that the United States of America would simply stand by and watch. No previous United States president, regardless of their party, has bowed down to a Russian dictator before.
That is Kamala Harris. She's too dumb to lie. She just says what somebody tells her to say. That's the opposite of the truth, of course. What President Trump is saying about NATO makes NATO stronger, not weaker. I had to stop to go like this. Bad. Well, the NATO member nations agreed once again in 2014 to pay 2% of their gross domestic product into the common defense. And now they keep telling us what a menace, what a danger Putin is. And they keep telling us that we should just pay for their defense. And I got to say, I was talking to Michael about this during the break. Many of you are well aware of this. My father was a Navy fighter pilot in World War II. And he went over to Europe to kill Germans in France. To kill Germans in France. My father died when I was a baby. My mother and my older brothers and I, we moved in with my mother's father, my grandfather, who was a World War I veteran who went to kill Germans in France. What are these Germans doing in France? You see, therein lies the rub. And then we put the lid on the Germans and the commies came along. You know, the Germans last time around, the Socialist Workers' Party of Adolf Hitler, and had to kill those guys. And before that, it was the Kaiser's boys. And then the Soviets, they rolled over Eastern Europe and they held it. They didn't liberate it. They enslaved it. You know, the difference between living under the Nazis and living under the Soviets was the flag. Other than that, not a lot of discernible difference. But then U.S. forces, Americans, mostly American young men, went and we staffed Checkpoint Charlie in Berlin, and we manned the Fulda Gap, waiting for the Soviet tanks to come flooding through. And we kept the peace in Europe forever and ever. And now you whiny SOBs, you can shove it, all right? Trump says if we don't pay our fair share, then he's not going to rush to our defense. And he said it in a tongue-in-cheek way, and he threw in a couple of little qualifiers, made it clear that he's just telling a story and telling a joke. And what he's doing is he's putting the screws to the crooked, lazy, fat, bonbon slurping Europeans who just sit there getting fat, knowing that the American middle class in middle America is going to pay for their national defense and their national security again. For how many centuries are we going to have to bail you people out? And I do have one friend who is just like, screw them. Why would we even be defending Europe in the first place? You put all the Western European countries together, they got more people, they've got a bigger economy when you put them all together. They can defend themselves. Let them defend themselves. Why would we get in the middle of it at all? And I've got to say, that's not an illegitimate discussion to have. The 20th century world order, the Pax Americana of 1945, where we smashed Imperial Japan and a couple of atomic bombs were dropped. In fact, my best girl and I, we watched Oppenheimer last night. At long last, finally, watched Oppenheimer. Yeah, I'll just move on from there. I want to spend too much time talking about this. But, here we are defending Europe again. Hey, here's another $60 billion for Ukraine. Keep killing Russians. It's on us. We got it. We'll pick up the tab. And we'll buy lunch, too. And we'll pay for parking. Don't worry about us. Just crazy. So why are we doing all that? And President Trump takes it to him, and that's Kamala in Munich lying. Oh, Trump says, and they misrepresent everything he said. And Kamala's too stupid to know that she's even being led around by the nose because she's not a bright person. But let's go to Senator Tim Scott. Senator Tim Scott is an American, and he's on the side of America and on the side of Western civilization. He's not a genocidal Jew hater like the whole Democrat Party. And, they're pandering. You see, Rashida Tlaib, who loves killing Jews, is out there telling Muslims that they have to not vote for Joe Biden, right? Just vote for none of the above or whatever, because she's a jihadi. She is pushing soft jihad, cultural jihad in the United States of America. But Tim Scott is not. Tim Scott is on our side, and he knows what President Trump is saying and what he's talking about. Now, I mean, again, if I were President Trump and I had this line about NATO, I would have added, and he kind of slipped in a thing like, if that happened. But they always take him literally, but not seriously, and it's just the attack machine of the rabid dogs of the transgender, mentally ill left. Senator Tim Scott.
We had a safer world. Putin stayed out of Ukraine. Hamas stayed out of Israel. In the Pacific, China was not targeting Taiwan. Our southern border, we had, on average, last year in office, about 1,000 folks crossing our border illegally. Today, the average is closer to 6,000.
Yeah. Other than that, Joe Biden's doing such a good job that the Los Angeles Times just ranked him among one of the top presidents of our lifetime. And by the way, Putin invaded Crimea. We say annexed because that makes it sound like it's over with, and it was within his rights to do so. Annexed Crimea under Barack Obama and Joe Biden, right? Now, let me go to these idiots at the Los Angeles Times. I think I'm riled up today. Am I riled up? Amazing stuff. But the experts that the Los Angeles Times talked to, just amazing. The headline is, experts rank Biden among the best presidents. Trump, ? Not so much. That's the Los Angeles Times headline. And in the article, the experts that they spoke to, who are a bunch of wankers, said Joe Biden is ranked the 14th best president in the history of the country, and Donald Trump is ranked the worst president in the history of the country. Probably because of all the peace. The Democrats love killing because they're the left. They love war in Europe and war in the Middle East and war on the Saudi Peninsula. They love war in the Red Sea. They love international commerce being attacked by troglodytes who are being funded and backed by Iran, like the Houthis, right? And so there it is. The Los Angeles Times, they spoke to their experts, and their experts say, their scholars say that Joe Biden is in the top 15 because he's number 14, best president of all time, and Donald Trump is ranked the worst president of all time. Isn't that amazing? Joe Biden beat out Republican favorite Ronald Reagan, who placed 16th best president of all time. Joe Biden is a stinky footstool. He's not even a president of the United States. The idea that, first of all, 8 years of Ronald Reagan, smashing, containing, crushing, rolling over the Soviet Union, the greatest economy, energy. Donald Trump, we had $2.11 gasoline. Everybody wasn't getting murdered like all the Democrats are murdering everyone now. And this completely ridiculous, just ridiculous. Topping the list were Abraham Lincoln, okay, Republican, shot in the head by a Democrat and murdered. Franklin Delano Roosevelt, sure, World War II, the Depression, great stuff. George Washington is number 3. He comes in behind FDR. Theodore Roosevelt, he's a good one. Thomas Jefferson, that's the top 5. But Donald Trump ranks dead last because of the people that they choose to ask. They're crooked. They're crooked people. Amazing stuff. Now, we know how they love war. Don't they love war? The left, they love war because they love killing. They love death more than we love life. That's the thing. from abortion to the military-industrial complex there, the party of death, to urban murders, to shootouts, to mass shootings, to all that. Speaking of which, Ann Coulter, did you see Ann Coulter was on Bill Maher on Friday night on HBO? They pay millions of dollars for 1 hour a week of Democrat Party Circle Fest. And he had as guest self-described communist Van Jones, who's a CNN communist and an Obama administration communist. He used to identify as a communist. Nobody's asked him in the last 20 years, hey, you're still a communist? Like Bernie Sanders, who honeymooned in the Soviet Union. He loves Putin. He's got to love Putin. So Ann Coulter was on with Bill Maher on Friday night on HBO and self-identified communist Van Jones. And they're talking about the shooting, the mass shooting by Democrats. Once again, almost all mass shootings are by Democrats. And the mass shooting at the Kansas City, Missouri celebration parade for the Kansas City Chiefs Super Bowl win. And Ann Coulter made an observation. Now, this was Friday evening, the Bill Maher show on HBO. And Ann Coulter, and they're like, oh, gosh, I wonder who shot all these people. And Ann Coulter made an observation that's obviously true, and that is, well, we know they're not white, because if they were white, we'd hear that right away. And if they're not, then, you know, it's like we get this all the time in Washington. 2 men carjacked 4 different people and shot 3 of them and fled in a Toyota Celica or something. They were dressed in black. That's what they say. They were dressed in black. And there's no description beyond that. And that happens every day in Washington, where they don't put out a description. Wearing white shoes. Right. It was, White Shoes Williams was the carjacker. That's the thing. So here's Ann Coulter with these clowns, these left-wing radical extremists. I think they probably went looting and maybe they shot somebody after the HBO show.
I mean, we don't know who did this shooting, by the way, the Super Bowl shooting.
We have some idea.
What?
If it were a white man shooting, we'd know.
Well, we don't know. But they haven't.
That's how we know it's not a white man. I can tell you that much.
Do you think they're repressing that reporting?
They wouldn't tell us about the transgender woman that shot up the Christian school for what, like a year? San Bernardino out here. Remember the crazy terrorist Muslims? That's when I first noticed, they're not telling us who it is. It's not a white male. The longer they go without telling you, it's not a white male.
Okay, well, for this one, for right now, as of Friday night, February 16th,
we know.
We don't officially know. Okay, you have special powers.
She saw the video of the black guys having the handcuffs put on them, like everybody else had. But we can pretend we can live in a make-believe world. That's the world they live in. It's and the crowd, the SEALs, they're morons, and the smug, self-righteous Van Jones smirking. Oh, yeah, sure, if it was a white. You're damn right. Well, remember the Boston Marathon bombing? CNN and the news media were touching themselves like Jeffrey Toobin. They were so excited when they saw the video of what appeared to be 2 white guys. Remember one wearing a baseball, and they're like, oh, thank God they're not Muslims, to blowing up the Boston Marathon. But they were Muslim immigrants from a Central Asian hellhole who were blowing it up because they were Muslims. Then they went on the run, and then, one Muslim ran over the other Muslim and killed his brother, and, that was okay, too. But conservative commentator Ann Coulter told HBO's Bill Maher that if the shooters at the Kansas City Chiefs Super Bowl parade were white males, we'd know their identities by now. 100% obviously true. Completely true. Happens every time. And she's also right when the transgender, and Ann Coulter said I think, was that a man pretending he's a woman? It was a Democrat, so they're gender fluid. They're all gender fluid. It's kind of a viscous fluid, but they're gender fluid. A toxic, odoriferous, viscous fluid, but they are gender fluid. And what Ann Coulter said was obviously true. Because the media is racist. You know why? Because the media is filled with lefties. And all lefties are racists and anti-Semites, just by the way. Straight up fact. I've been paying attention for some time now. Got a lot on that. Where do you hear these dim-witted Democrat members of Congress that I've got for you? Oh, the things they say. Hey, it's Chris Plant. Excited to tell you about our July 2024 Listener Sea Cruise. We'll be sailing around the British Isles, visiting Scotland and Ireland. Please join us. Visit ChrisPlantCruise.com. The Democrat Party is excited to announce that hundreds of thousands have been killed in the Ukraine war. They're very happy and they want more money for more killing because they're not liberals, they're the left. I'm all for smacking Putin. Putin's a bad guy. The troops they send down to Ukraine to die with no training, they're not, for the most part, bad guys, but the Democrats don't care. It's just like, abortion to them. They got 65 million of those. They say choice. Right? They're bloodthirsty ghouls. Let's take a phone call. Let's go to Hugh, calling from, he's driving in Maryland. Hugh, you're on the Chris Plant Show.
Hey, great, Chris. I'm just pulling over. Yep.
Wonderful.
Yep. So what I wanted to say is about this Trump thing, 355 million. Trump's a big dog. He'll be fine. I just want to point out to anyone who's a Democrat and listening that your boys just managed to screw the ordinary worker. So all of those union jobs that Trump as a property developer would have put in New York City and New York State, the plumbers, the pipe fitters, the bricklayers, the concreters, the carpenters, the electricians, the HVAC people, the drivers, the road flaggers, the plant machine operators, the crane operators, none of those jobs are going to happen. He'll just up sticks and move somewhere else because you've made it plain you don't want him. Similarly, everybody else does business will be looking at New York and saying, hey, if I fall foul of their party, I think I'll move. It's not worth it because I'm going to have to pay the buggers off. And the people who really lose are those people who are lower down the scale, who don't have the money to pick up sticks and move. And so you've stuck a lot of little people with another economic burden, and you haven't done anything to Trump because this guy thinks at least two steps ahead of you. He will have made plans and provision for this lawsuit having gone bad. He's not a fool. The man is probably the smartest man in the room, but you have managed to screw the little people. And you're just like the Labour Party in Britain, who continue to screw the little people. And honestly, that's why I left Britain 30 years ago.
Wow.
And the last thing I'll say, I was in the British Army from the late 70s to the early 90s. When I joined that army, it was 170,000 long-service professionals. We could do anything, anywhere, without support from anyone. And the Royal Navy had 56 frigates and a couple of aircraft carriers. The Royal Navy's now down to 16 frigates. The Army's 70,000 men. It can't recruit.
Wow. God bless you for paying attention. Hugh, I'm saluting you. Now, the Vice President of the United States, amazingly, Kamala Harris, was at the Munich Security Conference, and she was bragging that hundreds of thousands of Russians had been killed. Couldn't be happier about that. They love killing. They're the left. They're the most murderous gang of blood-drenched ghouls in the history of the world. They make the Islamists look like the Red Cross. Just crazy. And I did some looking up today because I do that. And right now, let's go to Democrat Congressman Ted Lieu. Ted Lieu is not an honest man. He's a dishonest man. He's a crooked man. He's awful. He's filth. He's a Democrat. He's from California. He's in the House of Representatives. And he was on MSNBC yesterday. And they were talking about the Putin rival, Navalny, who was murdered by Putin in a gulag. And then they arrested at least 400 people that were protesting the murder of Navalny because that's what they do. And they won't be released without charges like Democrats in the United States. It's going to be like, January 6th rather than like all the riots at the White House and so on, where nobody was charged with anything because filthy leftists are crooks. Here's Democrat Ted Lieu, MSNBC, on Sunday, talking about Navalny. You'll never guess who is responsible for Navalny being killed. Again, I shared the story with you last week out of the Washington Post that the reason Hamas attacked Israel was Trump's fault. The Washington Post actually argued that it was Trump's fault that Hamas attacked Israel, right, and murdered all those people and took hostages and dismembered people and raped people and murdered all those people. And they said it's Trump's fault because had it not been for those 3 peace deals that Trump got between Israel and Arab nations, that Hamas wouldn't have been angry. Right. They dug all those tunnels all those years because Trump was building peace deals. So the Washington Post lied about that, and they blamed Trump, which is a mental disorder, for Hamas attacking Israel. They're mentally ill, severely mentally ill, and gender dysphoric too. Democrat Congressman Ted Lieu wants to update the blame Trump binder.
I think we have to ask ourselves, why did Navalny all of a sudden die at this point in time?
Trump?
I first of all agree with President Biden that Russia is responsible for his death. Also, what happened in the few days leading up to his death?
What?
Well, we had former President Donald Trump essentially say that Russia should attack European countries.
No, he didn't say that.
That is crazy. That
you
is
lying sack of Jewia. Traitorous.
Russia certainly was listening.
You're a traitor.
And I think they thought, hey, we now have a green light to do all sorts of crazy stuff.
We have a green light.
If Trump would be president, Putin would have even more latitude.
Now, again, Putin took Crimea under Obama and Biden. Then he took nothing under Trump. Putin endorsed Joe Biden for president 2 weeks ago. Putin invaded Ukraine under Joe Biden. He invaded Crimea, Ukraine, the media says annexed, during Obama, because he's a spineless coward, Barack Obama, and Putin is a communist killer. And he knew that the frou-frou in the White House didn't have a gonad to his name, so he could do what he wanted. Now, Ted Lieu is officially mentally impaired and needs to be institutionalized involuntarily and receive treatment of some kind. That is the opposite of the truth. It's not only not true, it's the opposite of the truth. But that's perfectly normal for Democrats because mental illness is mainstream now. And anti-Semitism, genocidal anti-Semitism is mainstream now. And looting is mainstream now. And carjacking is mainstream. And honestly, stop shooting people, Democrats. Stop shooting people. Would you? Now let's go to this other Democrat member of the House of Representatives, a complete idiot, Gregory Meeks. Gregory Meeks has a tiny, tiny little brain about the size of an acorn, and that's it, and it doesn't work for it, but he's a member of Congress, so that's okay. And he's telling us that things are going so great, we need more money because we're killing hundreds of thousands of people, but it's good because they're Russians, you know, they're in the Russian military, poor SOBs, and he's coming up with these amazing numbers that make it sound really great that we're giving a lot of money to Ukraine because they're killing hundreds of thousands of Russians, and we should applaud this because this is happy news, right? Not that Putin cares, because Putin doesn't care. He's a commie. You know, they lost 25 million people in World War II. It's the proudest moment of their history. They're good with that. So here is Democrat Congressman Gregory Meeks.
Pass this supplemental and give them what they need so that they can continue to take this fight to Vladimir Putin and the Russians. They will win. They're already, they're outmanned, but they are winning, almost 12-1, to every death is hard. But for every one Ukrainian soldier that is lost, 12 to 15 Russian soldiers are lost.
12 to 15, and that's really good news. That is great. He's a member of the House of Representatives, and he has a brain like, a squirrel would reject the brain that Gregory Meeks has. Just amazing stuff. Extraordinary. He's a lawyer, and he's a member of Congress, and he's from New York. And these people, and Gregory Meeks, he was he on DNC TV? Because the Morning Joke, This is This Morning on Joke, and they're so proud. 315, they got a new number, 315,000 dead Russians.
So it just shows that if they have what they need, and I agree, some of the long-range missiles that now he needs to go in and to be able to attack in Crimea, some of where the weapons are being stored, etc., that's being utilized to reach into Ukraine. If he had that, that would help them in a mighty big way.
Do you mean etc. rather than etc.? I'm just curious, Congressman. That's your Democrat Party. Now, I do due diligence, unlike Congressman Meeks and unlike Congressman Ted Lieu and unlike Joe Scarborough and unlike any Democrat. Extraordinary stuff. Now, I went and I found the New York Times. The New York Times in August of last year said that the Ukrainian death toll was at 70,000. And the number of wounded as high as 120,000. Now, the term casualties means killed and or wounded. So that would be 190,000 casualties for Ukraine, all right? And now what they're very proud to announce today is that, according to U.S. intelligence leaking to their friends in the news media who they're dating, U.S. says Russia has suffered 315,000 casualties in Ukraine. Again, casualties equals killed and wounded, 315,000 casualties. But last August, the New York Times said there were 190,000 Ukrainian casualties. So how is that 10 times, what did he say, 12 to 15 times, 12 to 15 times is what he said. He is a lion sack of Julia, 12 to 15 times. Again, the New York Times, which is their Bible because they killed God and they worship Satan. In August, 190,000 Ukrainian casualties. Today, they say 315,000 Russian casualties. And then he says that's 12 to 15 times as many. That's not true. He is a liar and a moron, and he doesn't know what the numbers are. And he's too stupid and too lazy and intellectually dishonest to actually, he's got a computer in his phone, thanks to the patriarchy. You're welcome. He could, GTS, that's Google that stuff, and he doesn't because Gregory Meeks is a Democrat and therefore a dishonest man, and just amazing stuff. I came in riled up today, didn't I? Yes, I did. Man. All right, let's go back because I wanted to get to that other one, but let's go back to this dimwit Ted Lieu with Alex Witt on MSDNC. They were having a little circle fest in a hot tub. And wait a minute, you think that Navalny was killed because Trump said something, and that's why Putin suddenly he kills women in apartment buildings, and he has people thrown out of windows, tall buildings, and has them killed because people annoy him. He kills everybody. He's a communist. He's an old KGB guy. They lie about everything, and they're stupid. They're very ignorant people. Alex Witt is an incredibly ignorant person and hired for all the wrong reasons. I'll let you fill in the blanks. But here's Alex Witt on MSDNC, where they hire the Reverend Al Charlatan as a journalist, talking to the very, very dishonest Ted Lieu, who says that Navalny was killed by Putin because of Trump.
Are you suggesting there could be a link between what Donald Trump was saying?
You are bright.
Saying Russia, do whatever the hell you want, tornado allies.
Not what he said.
Do you think it
lion sack
potentially Putin? Because to your other point, the day before he died, he looked to be in perfectly good health. He'd spoken with his wife. He appeared via Zoom in some sort of a legal arraignment that he had to do there. We're looking at pictures right there. He was joking with the guards, joking with the judge or an attorney there. He looked absolutely fine.
And then
the next day drops dead?
Yeah. Well, that's what happens in communist countries. They killed 100 million people in the 20th century, Alex Witt. I'm not sure you know which century is the 20th century, but stick with me. I'll try to help you along. Yeah. And Ted Lieu, he's sticking with his made-up story.
I think it's quite a coincidence. And certainly Russia is listening to what the former president is saying. He's saying crazy stuff. And the language he's using is not only crazy, it dishonors the veterans and our military members who fought in World War II, who established this peaceful world order that has kept the peace for many, many years. And to say you essentially want to destroy NATO in not so many words is crazy.
In not so many words. He strengthened NATO while he was president, and what he's threatening would strengthen NATO further by requiring countries to live up to their treaty obligations to pay 2% of their gross domestic product into the common defense of the North Atlantic Treaty Organization for the defense of Western Europe and now too much of Eastern Europe as well, which is a little bit ironic also. Just amazing. You're a Democrat party. They are really something. Yes, they are. You know, the Democrat news media, they reject any suggestion that Joe Biden should be removed by way of the 25th Amendment to the Constitution because they voted for him. And that's all that matters. It's pretty extraordinary stuff. But anybody who suggests that Joe Biden is mentally broken and should be removed from the office of the president, that person will be attacked by the news media because our news media is overwhelmingly a front group for the Democrat Party. Now, it also ignores the fact that they called for President Trump to be removed from the presidency because they didn't vote for him, and he tweeted things that they didn't think were funny. And they called for his removal by way of the 25th Amendment again and again.
What exactly would have to happen to invoke the 25th Amendment in this country?
Obviously, in an ideal world, you would try to invoke the 25th Amendment, which I think is amply justified.
The man is deeply mentally unstable. The cabinet should convene immediately to discuss the 25th Amendment.
If he's crazy and incompetent and stupid, then we have to look at the 25th Amendment.
People in the president's inner circle have brought up the 25th Amendment at least 20 times.
This is 25th Amendment kind of stuff.
The whisper campaign over the 25th Amendment.
It's a whisper campaign.
Amendment. Let's talk about the 25th Amendment.
Look at the 25th Amendment.
There is the 25th Amendment.
Consider the 25th Amendment.
Maybe we should consider the 25th Amendment.
The 25th Amendment.
How likely is it that the 25th Amendment...
25th Amendment.
25th Amendment.
25th Amendment. 25th Amendment.
Yeah, it's the 25th Amendment. I think they wanted to remove Trump by way of the 25th Amendment. Isn't that amazing? Now let's go to number 14. The left-wing extremists... he's Jewish, but he's got to be an anti-Semite, too. Ezra Klein. He's a New York Times. He's one of the girls from the DNC steno pool. And even he, this weekend, is saying what I was saying last July, that Joe Biden has to go. He does not have what it takes to be president of the United States. He's not going to make it to Election Day 2024. It's time for Joe Biden to leave the presidency, find a way to step down. And Ezra Klein, he's rending his clothing, he's tearing his clothing, and he's hurting himself saying it out loud, but it's time for Joe Biden to go.
I think Biden, as painful as this is, should find his way to stepping down as a hero. And then I think Democrats should meet in August at the convention to do what political parties have done at conventions so many times before. Organize victory.
Organize victory. He's got to step down as a hero. As a hero. Why? Because of the war in Europe and the war in the Middle East and China nipping at our heels and the Houthi rebels shutting down the passageway to the Suez Canal. Because of gas prices and inflation prices and grocery store prices. And what are we at? Like 19% real inflation under Joe Biden. Amazing. Joe Biden, we got Charlemagne the Misspelled God, too. And Joe Biden tried to make sense this weekend while he was on vacation again at one of his multi-million-dollar beach houses that he got on a government salary. It's good to be a Democrat. I'm going to get in as much as I can. And Rashida Tlaib, she wants to destroy the world for the jihad. Charlemagne, the Misspelled God, was on one of the Sunday shows on ABC this week with John Carl because Charlotte, it's about the party of Klan, the party of the KKK and of lynching, and the party of the Confederate States, pandering to the black vote in America. So they're sucking up to Charlemagne, who misspells the word the, and then calls himself the misspelled God. And he's on with John Carl. And gosh, the nuggets of wisdom that cascade from this man.
He's just an uninspiring candidate. There's nothing about, Joe Biden that makes you want to listen to him. That's why he should be leaning on, his vice president.
Has she met your expectations?
Yeah, no, she hasn't.
Should be leaning on his vice president. Kamala, has she met your expectations? No, she hasn't. No, they both suck. They're both awful.
Donald Trump is 3 years younger than President Biden, but he just comes off a lot more youthful.
A lot more youthful is how he comes up, and that's absolutely true.
Do you get blowback from the White House? Because you, even now in this conversation, you're very tough on Biden.
From the White House.
When you say something critical, do you hear from him?
Yeah, and I think that's the stupidest ever. Because I think that, I'm sorry.
But we can bleep that out.
Yeah. Because I feel like you should be able to criticize whoever your elected official is.
You
right?
think?
And even if I do criticize them, I'm criticizing them because of what I see coming up in November. I see what we're facing. So what I'm saying to them
is, and it's so good now, we got to save it.
Urgency.
Yes, essentially, we need more war in Europe and more war in the Middle East and more murder in the United States, more carjacks. More than 10,000 African Americans died of murder in the United States last year. Thanks, Joe Biden.
You can't keep saying that there's a threat to democracy, and democracy as we know it is going to be gone, but not act like it. And the other problem is
you should riot.
Always done this with every single Republican candidate.
You should
loot. Since I've been alive, whoever the Republican presidential candidate has been, they've demonized. It doesn't matter who it is. It doesn't matter if it's John McCain. It doesn't matter if it was, Mitt Romney. It doesn't matter who it is. They will demonize the Republican candidate. And now that there's an actual legitimate threat right there in our faces, they're like the party who cried wolf. Nobody believes them.
You think? And then they burn your city down and shoot your mother. Let's go to Rashida Tlaib. I know we're out of time, but Rashida Tlaib said when the primaries come in Michigan, don't vote for Joe Biden.
Also important to create a voting bloc, something that is a bullhorn to say enough is enough. We don't want a country that supports wars and bombs and destruction. We want to support life.
Sure you do.
We want to stand up.
That's a lie.
Every single life killed in Gaza.
She's a liar. She's pro-Hamas. She's a terrorist and a Democrat member of Congress. She's a genocidal anti-Semite and a Democrat.